YouTube, I got the conversation started on Instagram about defund the police, and I want to break down my take on defund the police. I'm going to talk about how it is, mostly how it is, and I'm also going to talk about how it should be. And we've been seeing this slogan. I know that I got back from California and I was going for a walk, and that's the first time I saw it. It must have been about 2 years ago, and I saw it was like a bumper sticker that said defund the police, and I thought, whoa, that's interesting. I had to do a double take. I'd never seen something like that before. And then it kind of started picking up some steam, like I was seeing it more often, the slogan around the city, around Washington, defund the police. And, I observed that people were becoming a lot more outspoken, about these very politically charged issues. With the more, they saw on TV, just blatant displays of police brutality. We witnessed the Trayvon Martin case, and it's been a number of young black individuals who have been murdered by law enforcement, and it triggers something within people, not just black people with a heart. Anybody with a heart, it's gonna feel something when they watch someone's life get taken, and no justice being served repeatedly. Anybody who feels anything. And so when I was talking about Joe Biden the other day, I listened to a lot of independent black media, and I don't agree with everything, but I do agree with certain things. I listened to Tariq Nasheed, I listened to Vicky Dillard, I listened to Boyce Watkins, and I make an effort to listen to independent black media, because it's going to tell a perspective that you're not going to hear on CNN, you're not going to hear on MSNBC, you're not going to hear on Fox. And I would say one criticism that I may have is it can be a little bit divisive, but at the same time, there's a need for it, and I'm going to be as balanced in this conversation as possible. I'm going to try to be as fair and balanced in this conversation as possible. So in a dream world, right, how it should be, I would love to be able to be cool with everyone on an equal playing field, right? I would love to be able, because I know cool people of really all backgrounds. I know honest people of all backgrounds. I know good-hearted people who really just want to do the right thing of all backgrounds. And we would all, in the ideal world, we would all be able to be cool. We would live in cohesion. Everybody would be winning in every way. We'd be winning in, business, and we'd be winning economically, financially. We'd be winning, in every single way, spiritually, and we'd be winning, with our we'd all be winning, in the most ideal circumstance. And there'd be no malice, no hate, no superlatives. Everybody would just be on an equal playing field. But we know that that's not the case. And we know that sometimes, pretty much every time, deprivation will create a specific mentality and a specific condition. And so if you are happily married and you're in a very secure relationship and you feel loved by your partner and your partner's giving you attention and your partner's nurturing you and things like that, the likelihood of you hating on the next couple is slim, because you feel secure within, you feel happy. If you are winning financially, there's always going to be those people who are always going to be, comparing. Oh, well, that person has the latest, BMW, or the latest this or the latest that. There's always going to be that. But generally, it's deprivation that creates a certain mentality. And so when you have people that are constantly deprived, it's going to create not just a thirst, not just a hunger, but also really, feelings of hatred, jealousy, animosity, resentment. Why is it that we are always the ones who are getting the least? I'll use an example. If you're in class, right? You're in kindergarten, and there's 20 people, And it's only Susie that gets skipped over when it's time to have lunch, right? So everybody's getting their lunch, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But every day Susie's like, where's my food? And then the next day, Tuesday, Susie's like, no lunch for me again? And then it's like months go by and everybody else is getting a sandwich and Susie's not getting a sandwich. Like, she's going to feel some kind of way about that. It's not that she's necessarily prone to be jealous of her other classmates. It's that she's being deprived and it's blatant. Now, who are you if you're witnessing that? If you're one of the other 19 classmates and you're eating every day, you're getting your peanut butter and jelly sandwich at noon, and Susie's like starving, like she's like losing weight because she doesn't have any, she's not eating. You know what I'm saying? Like, are you gonna be like, well, my sandwich is great? You know, how are you wired? And so I say this to say that yes, I believe that the Black community does want to be able to live in cohesion and at peace with everybody, but because of such long, extended deprivation, there are feelings of resentment and animosity, and there's feelings of hatred. And I feel as if you would be insensitive to not be able to understand that perspective. I feel like you would almost be ignorant to not be able to at least, even if you have no compassion or empathy, just from an intellectual standpoint, I feel like you would be deliberately being ignorant to not be able to understand that perspective. Now let's take it a step further. What if Susie's parents were the ones who were every day in the bread baking factory baking the bread, boiling the peanuts, and making the jelly? And you guys are eating. Everybody's eating. She's not eating. And her parents are the ones who are making the sandwiches. And her parents aren't even getting paid from making the sandwiches. Could you understand that? I mean, we have to be able to be very practical and logical about what is the outcome of deprivation. What is the mentality that comes from extraordinary deprivation and injustice? And why do people feel so comfortable having when they know that they only have because other people don't have? And I reiterate the point that this whole thing is economic. So we go back to defund the police. Slavery was economic. Free labor, economic. Redlining and Jim Crow and all the things that came after it, economic. Black Lives Matter is economic. Defund the police is economic. Defund, funds. Fund being the root word of defund. Funds, economic. Why do I say this whole thing is money? And race is really just like a little bit of it. Well, you know, race, I've said this before, is definitely a social construct. However, in order for certain people to have, there must be a population of have-nots. And in order for these things to be able to occur, there have to be people who are checking other people. There has to be social orders in place in order for people to be able to maintain their wealth. So we talk about Joe Biden, who recently made these comments about the Hispanic population eventually, you know, coming within the next decade or two, is going to be the majority of America. Now, I've said this before, this is nothing new. Black and brown people globally are the majority. White people are the minority on a global level. There's more people of color than there are white people globally. There are far more people living in poverty than there are wealthy people globally, even domestically here in America, which just happens to be one of the richest countries in the world, but still has a huge wealth gap. Still has a ton of poor people, but if you take it a step further, the poorest people still aren't living as bad as poor people in third world countries. But I don't want to derive too much from this conversation. This whole thing is economics. And defund the police. Why is it so? Why are we having this demand of that? Well, the CIA, the FBI, law enforcement, our politicians are paid by tax-paying dollars. So if the citizens aren't satisfied with law enforcement, and if they perceive law enforcement to be not doing their job, which is to protect and to serve all citizens of the United States, then in theory, they could make a demand to defund them. Because what is my money going towards if it's not going towards what you said that you were here to do, right? So it's like, if we talk about America as a corporation and law enforcement, the CIA, FBI are employees of this corporation, right? In theory, if I am the head of a corporation, if you have a certain duty that I am requiring for you to be able to keep your job, and you are not doing your duties, I could fire you. So defund the police is basically the people saying, we want to fire you guys because we don't think you're doing your job. Now, in theory, we're talking about how it is and how it should be, right? So in theory, that's really kind of how it should be, right? Because even though people have gotten it twisted, technically politicians and these law enforcement and different tentacles and different branches of law enforcement are technically our employees as the citizens of the United States. In theory, our president, our president, we vote for, right? They say that it is a collective, the majority wins. So in theory, we put them in office, along with all of the other politicians, the mayors and the governors and the senators, everybody, in theory. So in theory, they are our employees. In theory. And so how is this economic? Well, when I say in theory, I'm saying that that's how it should be. But how it really is that these are employees, but who they're employed by is not really the United States citizens. It's not really the American population. They basically do the biddings of the rich. And they look at it as that's how we eat. That's who feeds us. And when people are outraged by it, we have to to become realistic about the way that things really work in this country. And we have to look at law enforcement also as the same law enforcement that was enforcing the law during slavery. So they were on their horses, with their whips, whipping people who were considered 3/5 of a human being if they were not obeying their slave masters. If the cotton wasn't getting picked fast enough, they were turning a blind eye to the rapes that were occurring on the plantation, all of the bad stuff. They were turning a blind eye to it, and they were enforcing a law that was, totally inhumane. And so how you all have become credible as far as any expectation of doing the right thing to some degree is kind of beyond me. Like, you have more years in being corrupt and not doing the right thing than you have doing the right thing. And I'm not saying that the people should throw in the towel. You know, I'm saying like we should galvanize. People should be collectively outraged. People should be recognizing their power, and they should be trying to break this whole thing down. But what I'm saying is we also have to have the understanding that this is not anything new. And so I don't understand, you know, with the outrage, like, have people been living under a rock? Do people not know American history? Because there's more cases of corruption than there are not. And this is, you know, to also be able to recognize who the villain is and who's not. On a global level, there have been people, and I'm not saying all white people because, again, that's the okie doke. That is the mind game. Black versus white versus Latin. Nah, even here in America, majority of the people are poor. If majority of people in America are white, majority of white people are poor. Even rich whites are the exception. Rich people are the exception. And they've used these tactics of division, divide and conquer, to basically separate us, to basically water down our power. Because the minute that we come together is the minute that they lose their power. Collectively, we actually could say, no, we're not going to do these things. No, we don't believe in this. Collectively, we actually have the power to overthrow if we wanted to. But because we're busy fighting each other constantly, they're banking on us never doing that, never coming together. This whole system will plummet the minute that the poor people recognize really what's going on in their collective power. And I will say with black media, that would be the only thing that I don't necessarily agree with, because there is a lot of division and we don't really have the luxury to be so divided. Now, what I will say is, if I'm really your friend, and I could be white, I could be Latin, I could be Asian, if I'm really your friend and I'm watching you and every day we're getting our peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and you're not, I'm gonna say something also. I'm gonna be like, this is not fair, this is not right. She's not eating. We all are. She's not. That's not fair. And so silence is a part of the problem as well. To me, it was never enough for, you know, white people to hold up a Black Lives Matter sign and not join with us for our fight for reparations, because again, this is really an economic issue. Everything is an economic issue. Everything comes down to economics. The poor education that's received in inner city schools is directly correlated to the fact that in slavery, it was illegal to read. You could be killed just for reading a book. And so there were laws in place to make sure that black people remained ignorant and unlearned and unread for years, centuries. And then after slaves were free, that separate but equal thing was bull. It was insufficient school books. And so there was a deliberate effort to keep people ignorant, to keep people unlearned, unaware, to keep people behind. And we can say, oh, racism was so cruel. Yeah, of course it was cruel. Of course it was inhumane. But bottom line is, it was economics. It was economics. I need to have you disadvantaged in order for me to be advantaged. I need to be able to put you in a situation where you are not on my level in order for me to maintain my level. It's not purely economics, but it's economics at the core. COVID is economic. They're saying that black people are disproportionately contracting COVID. I was just listening to Tariq Nasheed, who was talking about how they keep repeating this rhetoric about the disparities of COVID. But look at the health disparities. Look at black people are disproportionately in poor health because less money means less access to quality health care, to good food, to good things that are going to have you here longer. And we all know that a virus is you're only susceptible to a virus if your internal system is conducive to that virus. And so if your immune system is on point because you're eating healthy and you're taking good care of yourself and all of these things, then you're going to be less susceptible to catch anything, even the common flu. So it goes back down to economics again. Politics is economics. Poor people can't be presidents because it takes too much money to campaign. And why? I mean, the whole thing is, and I'm going back to how it should be, right? How it is versus how it should be. The amount of money that you guys spend on campaigning is outrageous. I mean, that money could be put to so much better use. And you guys feel comfortable being the next president and you're spending crap loads of money trashing the next candidate when you got people whose ribs are touching because they're not eating. You got people with no homes in this very country and talking about you're fit to lead and you're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on a campaign. The amount of money that you guys spend collectively between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party annually, do you know how many problems that could solve? How many crises that could solve? And you feel comfortable spending that money bashing people on some petty shit? And the stimulus checks didn't get out? Poor people couldn't even have a proper Thanksgiving this year, even with COVID and all the crap that's going on because of your egos? And you guys think that you're fit to lead? You guys remember before Trump got into office, The Apprentice? I really used to enjoy that show, actually, to be honest with you. I used to watch The Apprentice. And I remember there were episodes that they'd have to call in their rich friends, to fundraise. And the black contestants would lose every time because your net worth, they say, is your net worth. And so generally the idea of maintaining your wealth has a lot to do with who you know and who you associate with and who owes you a favor and who you're cool with. All of those things really do deal with your wealth. And bottom line is black people just don't have the same amount of money as most. Even the poor blacks still make less than the poor whites. So I remember the black people would lose every time whenever they'd have to call their rich friends for fundraisers. And like I said before, the CIA, the FBI, law enforcement, they're all paid by tax-paying dollars. And so in theory, the demand to defund them from the people would be somewhat legitimate if the people are paying their salaries. Now it's the rich that end up paying taxes, so law enforcement adheres to the rich's demands. And why is there a high level of corruption? Well, it's because they won't bite the hands that feed them. The rich are the predators and the poor are the prey. And law enforcement, the CIA, the FBI have somewhat become the personal goons of the rich. They do their biddings. A lot of times they don't even question it. They don't even look at the expectations. They just do it without questioning it. It's almost like the military. The military, they have these tactics that they get almost like brainwashed while they're in preparation. And part of their programming, that sir, yes, sir, sir, yes, sir, is not to question. It's just to do. Which to me is insane. It's insane that you could ever be programmed not to question and just to do. And we talk about high levels of corruption in time. It's almost frightening. Almost frightening how people can adhere to such injustice on a massive scale. We talk about slavery. Slavery was law. And everyone who was a part of it knew what they were doing. They knew what was going on. They were aware of these inhumane practices, but they agreed to do it. On some sir, yes, sir. Not questioning it. Just obeying, just blindly obeying. Same with Adolf Hitler. This notion of an Aryan race, what? I mean, anybody with a science mind would be like, time out. We're going to kill everybody just because they don't look like us? When DNA means, you know, it's less than 0.05% of your actual, you know, genetic makeup and who you are, this is senseless. Well, yes, we're going to create an Aryan race, and if they don't look like us, we're going to kill them. And on some sir, yes, sir, people agreed to it. So what are people willing to obey, and what are people willing to agree to? And history has deemed you guys pretty much to be untrustworthy. And so I'm uncertain how you guys got a makeover. That's my main question. Like, cross-continental, you've been responsible for mass genocide. Like, this is generational. Like, it's centuries deep. Cross-continental. So when did you guys get the makeover of being trustworthy and honest and having integrity and not being self-serving is beyond me. I don't understand how that one got switched up. And then these frivolous investigations, I mean, these nonsensical investigations, and this is on the U.S. tax-paying dollars, citizens, dimes, targeting non-criminals who pose no domestic threat on the U.S. tax-paying dime. And you've made yourselves the enemy by targeting poor people and abusing your power. And so don't look like this is absurd, you know, that people are saying defund the police, because you guys have been doing this stuff. You guys have been abusing your power. You haven't been questioning things. You've just been obeying things that are totally inhumane, totally against what we say that we stand for as far as our freedoms in America, our freedom of religion, our freedom of speech. And not questioning. You haven't been questioning if it's right or wrong. You've just been doing it. And certainly you will be held responsible for that. Not just by law, but by spiritual law. Don't think that just because you have a badge that you're going to be exempt from spiritual law. And this is no conspiracy theory. This is well known. This is the truth. Cops profile, cops racially profile, and they're invested in it. They're invested in it because they work for people who are invested in it. And this is, again, I say this is economic. Everything. The way that they tax the poor. I mean, it's insane in D.C. You know, I consider myself somewhat intelligent. I'm looking at these signs, these parking signs. It's like, you need to take a minute just to figure out if you can park. No parking from there. I believe that they're deliberately meant to confuse people. It's all a money game. $50 ticket for this, $100 ticket for this. And then we find out you guys got quotas. So you guys are basically out here getting money from the poor, getting money from everyday citizens on some stupid rules. And the thing about it is, with law enforcement, who are these people? Now they're saying, well, we're not going to even consider defund the police, but we are going to consider, you know, doing this and doing that. I don't believe that they should even be able to have a gun in their hand until their minds are fully checked out. Until they have passed, and not you know, some easy test. You know, it has to, people need to be mentally sound in order to be able to shoot, in order to be able to have a license to kill. And there has to be no financial incentive. We have to eliminate the financial incentive. And that's what I feel like is unrealistic on my end when I talk about my dream world in La La Land. The only way that we can eliminate corruption is if we eliminate the financial incentives. And that will never happen because America is a corporation. Every single black person, brown person, poor person that gets locked up, that's money. free labor. Free labor. So now you have a percentage of, we'll take the black community for example, a percentage of black men, a large percentage of black men that go behind bars. Now you have single mothers who have to work overtime, may or may not have to rely on the system to be able to cover their basic needs, because now we've destroyed the family. So now you have children growing up with no father. You're creating more sickness, more unbalanced children, more sick children. And in theory, more people to continue to repopulate these jail cells. And you've created such a system that's so difficult for people to actually win in it, where the odds are really stacked against them. And then you've criminalized anything that could possibly get the money outside of the system that you've created. I mean, let's just say you want to start a legitimate business. The amount of licenses that you have to create, it's very difficult for a poor person who doesn't have those contacts to be able to just start a business. And this isn't coming from a defeatist attitude. I'm just saying that the American dream is not what you guys are making it seem to be. And we want to be idealists, and we want to believe in people, and we want to believe in the everyday man, and we want to believe in the good cops too. We really do. We want to believe that there's good cops out here that are going to do the right thing. We don't want to vilify you guys. We don't want to hate you guys. Well, I'll speak for myself. I don't want to hate anybody. But you have to take personal responsibility for the role that you play in the image that you have, while you deliberately target disadvantaged people and you prey on the poor. And it's a vicious cycle to some extent, because you guys aren't empowered either. Sir, yes, sir, that's not power. You guys will lose your jobs if you go against the system, and then your families won't be able to eat. I understand that. I understand that's how that works. I understand if you are one of the good cops, if you aren't that bad, that good apple among a bunch of bad apples, that there will be repercussions and consequences to you going against the grain, to you standing up against the establishment, to you questioning things. Because there's a vested interest in being able to keep people socially and economically disadvantaged. And the bottom line is, with cops, it doesn't take 1,000,000 degrees to become one. Most cops do have families, do have personal responsibilities, do have people that they have to take care of. The benefits for being a cop are pretty good. A lot of times it's not people's dream job. And so they turn a blind eye to things that are just plain and simply wrong, just to be able to keep their status. And I have a vested interest in making people ask the right questions and unifying the collective so these things stop taking place, because my father was the first Muslim chaplain, and he spent 20 years, over 20 years, 2 decades of his life, mentoring inmates in upstate penitentiary and in Attica. And I've said this before, the mayor of New York would call him whenever there were uproars in Attica, and he would have to come in to create peace among the inmates. And the stories that he could tell you were really heartbreaking, and how some of these people were incarcerated for no reason. Some of these people were put behind bars, literally falsely accused and incriminated, and had to spend years of their lives behind bars for doing nothing, for just living life. Crimes that they did not commit. These things happen often. And the corruption is just unreal. And you don't provide people opportunities. to create good lives. And then you criminalize people for taking alternate routes out of desperation and deprivation. And so the same way that there's this demand for this, demand for vaccines, I've never heard a demand for reparations. And the fact is, if all of this stuff is economics, why is there no demand for reparations? These people that have been deprived so long, targeted so long, been America's prey for so long. Don't you understand that if the wealth gap is closed, don't you understand that if reparations are distributed, that a lot of these problems will go away? When people have access to actual wealth, people have access to actual land and legitimate opportunities, don't you understand that these things will just go away? See, I don't like deceit. I don't like the okie doke. I don't like the idea of you just making it seem like people are just predisposed to be barbaric, predisposed to be criminals, predisposed to be savages. And you have no, you lie and deceive as if you have no role in that, when you know that was the plan the whole time. That was the plan all along. And so something's got to give. And you have to understand, President-elect Joe Biden, the way that you're talking to the black community, the way that you're talking to black leaders, that's ridiculous. There's no humility with these politicians and the understanding that it's the people that got you in there. It's the people that you govern. Without the people, you are unemployed. And I understand that there's a certain authoritative, you have to have credibility as somebody who's able to govern, able to lead by the way that you talk and the way that you carry yourself. However, from what I'm hearing, the idea that you guys needed the black community to get you into office, and you got all of these people, to tell people to go vote, all of these wealthy blacks to tell people to go vote, how they have to go vote and have to go do it, and now you won't even have a conversation with black leadership. And the standards that you have for us are definitely not the standards that you have for yourselves. This mentality has not disappeared. Well, they should be lucky to get crumbs. What? We should be lucky to get crumbs. And so I've said this before, and I'll say this again, when it comes to this topic of defund the police, you could get mad all day at the messengers. You can get mad all day at the people that call you out for the corruption. You can get mad all day at hearing the truth and not liking what you hear. But the bottom line is that you're not going to be able to escape divine judgment that's going to reign for you turning a blind eye to the things that you do to the poor people of America. And to the poor people, I will encourage you, deeply, I will encourage you to not fall prey to the divide and conquer tactics. It's been going on for too long. Latin people, you guys should be fighting for black people to have reparations. If you study American history, you'll say it's only what's right. Just like collectively, we should be fighting for the indigenous people to be able to continue to get reparations. If we study the history of America, we'll say it's only what's right. And so you turning a blind eye also to extreme injustice is not going to put you in a good situation either. Just because it's not your community doesn't mean it's a problem that does not need to be resolved. We have to do what's right for America, and that means that paying indigenous people and paying the people whose ancestors built this country what it's deserved is a non-negotiable. And everybody was getting mad at some of the entertainers that said, no, we're not voting for Biden, we're not doing that, because there's been no plan of action to address the problems that need to be addressed. It's been the same usury relationship I'm going to use you to get your vote. And then once I get what I need, to hell with you. And I just want to end with the fact that the power is with the people, and the power has always been with the people. The power has always been with the people. And so I ask my Asian brothers and sisters, my Latin brothers and sisters, my white brothers and sisters, to stand with us in our fight for reparations, to stand with us in our fight for justice, to stand with us in our fight for opportunities, to stand with us in our fight to level the playing field. Because what is about to happen is they're going to be giving you power. And the power that they're going to be giving you is going to be basically a sale of your soul. And this is specific to my Latin brothers and sisters. They're going to be asking you to sell your soul. And they're going to be asking you to do their bidding and continue the work of oppressing the melanated people of America in order for you guys to maintain your power, in order for you guys to maintain your jobs. This is what Biden is insinuating. This is what I'm reading between the lines. No, we need to keep certain people disadvantaged, or else this whole system is not going to work. So we're going to give you guys a little bit of power as long as you guys maintain that. Maintain making black folks the prey, the ones that fill the jail cells. Continue to destroy the black family unit. Continue to annihilate the nuclear family. Continue to keep black people impoverished. And this is going to be a decision that your community is going to have to make. And understand that no one is exempt of divine judgment. Until next time, YouTube, peace.